Free agency is starting to settle down around the NFL, and the Dallas Cowboys have done little since it opened last week. And now we will discuss the three biggest questions right now about the Cowboys free agency, and more specifically about what is next. Let's get to it. Here we go. What is up, everyone, and welcome into A to Z Sports Dallas Primetime. I am your host, Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday through Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central here on Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network. With a lot more content coming your way, make sure that you check out atozsports.com/Dallas. And as always, do me a favor and hit the like button for me if you enjoy the show. Welcome, everyone, on a Wednesday night. It is a great night to talk some Cowboys football, and honestly, no news today on the Cowboys front because not a lot happened around the NFL, and even less so for the Cowboys. There are some news maybe about the top 30 visits that we will start discussing, I guess, pretty soon here on the show. So far, we know about three of them. I believe Edgerrin Cooper, Trevin Wallace. There's also Matthew, the tackle from Pittsburgh. I'm misremembering the last name, but he's more of a day 3/UDFA type of guy from what I've seen. But we're going to start getting more into the draft conversation, I guess, in the next week or something like that. But in the meantime, though, I wanted to talk about where the Cowboys are at right now in free agency. Because honestly, doesn't seem like we have a lot of answers about where the Cowboys are going next. Now, recently, on Monday, I put together an article on the 5 questions for the second week of free agency. Now, I've cut that down to 3, though, because 2 of them have already been answered. One was whether or not Jonathan Hankins was going to be brought back. We now know the answer to that one. No, he's signing with the Seattle Seahawks. In case you missed it, that's what we talked about last night, in case you want to go check that out. But we also got an answer about basically, what the Cowboys were going to do at running back. And this one might still change, but the Cowboys did re-sign Rico Dowdle since I published that article. And they might add somebody else. They might go the J.K. Dobbins route, as some people have speculated on, including Dez Bryant, former Cowboys wide receiver. But it makes a lot of sense that the Cowboys would stick just as they are and wait until the NFL draft to add anybody else. Now, that being said, though, we still have 3 questions that remain unanswered. And number 1, I think the biggest concern in our minds right now is Stefon Gilmore. What is going to happen with Stefon Gilmore? And let me ask you guys in the chat, I will let you chime in directly in this question. From 1 to 10, how likely do you think the Cowboys are to re-sign the former defensive player of the year cornerback? Because, we're over a week into the process, and the Cowboys have not taken care of, honestly, a very good starter that they had in 2023. I think there's no denying that Stefon Gilmore, even though he had some rough moments, especially against some of the speeder guys, right? Some of the faster young cats, Stefon Gilmore still played a pretty great season overall. Green Bay Packers game was pretty ugly. He was banged up with the shoulder, and the Cowboys basically turned to playing more zone coverage, it appears. Based on the comments from Barry Church, for example, that's more or less what happened in Green Bay, or versus Green Bay, not in Green Bay. But right now, how likely do you think is a Stefon Gilmore re-signing at this point? Jimmy, with the low answer, he goes with a 3. Gregory says 5.7. Katharina basically goes with a 0 because she says he is going to the Patriots. And it sure sounds like the Patriots are in on Stefon Gilmore. Katharina says 0. There's been some New England-based insiders so far over there on the Patriots side of things that have reported that the Patriots and Gilmore could make sense for a reunion. Now, I don't know how much fire there is to that smoke, but did I say it the other way around, by the way? Sorry about that. I'm not sure how true that might be, but there are multiple Patriots reporters that have put that out there that Stefon Gilmore could return to New England. And it's a new era with the Patriots. It isn't the same era with Bill Belichick where they didn't want to spend in guys because now it's Gerard Mayo's team. And they definitely are doing things differently. They paid several of their own players, which were not exactly cheap, like Mike Onwenu, the offensive tackle who is sticking around. They brought back several weapons for whoever starts for them next year, depending on who they pick at number 3 overall. I think it's going to be their QB of the future, whether that's Drake May, whether that's Jaden Daniels. So maybe seeing Stefon Gilmore go back to New England would make sense. But here's where I'm at. And I do know some people think that he's still going to be back. I saw somebody, Martin, saying he'll be back. He'll be back. Got to do something, says Martin. Martin, I agree with you that they got to do it. I'm not sure I'm buying into the fact that they will, though. Right now, I'll say Stefon Gilmore, I'll give the Cowboys from 1 to 10 a 3 of chances of getting him back. And here's my reasoning. I just have not seen the Cowboys spend at all in this free agency. Eric Kendricks doesn't fall into that category when he's being signed for $3.5 million. Now, that doesn't mean I don't like the signing. You know I do. I've talked about it on the show. I talked about it before it even happened. Talked about it after it happened in a very positive light, but it's not like an expensive signing. Then you look at the decisions that they've made in-house, and the guys that they're bringing back are the minimum deal type guys. Like they're bringing back Jordan Lewis on the contract salary benefit thing where he basically counts half towards the cap or less than he's getting paid. Same thing with guys like Trent Sieg. You know, the guys that they have let walk in free agency, Tyron Smith, Tyler Viadish, Armstrong, Fowler, guys that I don't know how much money Fowler signed for, but Armstrong signed for, you know, a good chunk of money. What I'm saying is they just haven't been aggressive even in the re-signing department. And I don't think Stefon Gilmore is going to be cheap. I don't think he's going to be expensive. I think he's going to be under $10 million, but he's what? Likely going to be around $7 million for an NFL team out there, specifically one that is trying to be a contender or trying to get back to its winning ways. In the case of the Patriots, for example, I think there's going to be a team out there that is going to be willing to pay Stefon Gilmore some more money. And if you're Gilmore, who exactly are you loyal to? We've seen Gilmore play for several teams now, including the Patriots, so it would be a reunion. I don't think the Cowboys are at a spot where they're like, come on, run it back with us and we'll go win a ring. I don't think the Cowboys are going to be a losing team or anything like that, but I do think they have little going for them in that arena where they're telling Stefon Gilmore, you know, run it back and we'll get there. We'll get to the Super Bowl. I don't know that's a strong selling point for the Cowboys right now. And I do think that Gilmore is just going to go with the highest bidder if the difference is significant. If it's not, maybe he sticks around in Dallas. He has seemed to be very happy about his time in Dallas. He seems to have a good relationship with Trevon Diggs, even though Diggs got hurt early on last season and we didn't really saw that duo evolve together. But he seems pretty happy with where he's at. But, you know, there's also a Dan Quinn going away to another team. So there's a defensive coordinator change. Sure, Al Harris stepping up to the assistant head coach role and all that. But still, I still think there's just not enough for that decision to not be heavily influenced by the finances. And if there's a bidding war with any other team out there, I could definitely see Stefon Gilmore just leaving. I'm right now, I'm skeptical that it happens. Could they surprise us? Yes. Could they make it work? Absolutely. Sure, the cap number, everything, cap is a little bit tight, but they can make it work as long as they want to make it work because they can restructure deals, they can extend players, they can lower those cap numbers, and they can just get it done, right? We know that the cap number thing is just an excuse from the Cowboys, so they could make it work. The problem is if they want to do it. And I'm not really sure, especially because they're pretty well set at cornerback starter-wise with Diggs, Lewis, and Bland. It's not like they absolutely need a cornerback. Now, this situation would be pretty intriguing. Mel Hayes here says Gilmore will not be signed by anyone until after the draft. There certainly comes a time each year near the draft where free agency just dies down because now teams are just like waiting to see what am I gonna get in the draft, right? Once they're pretty well set and they're like, I have these needs, but they can wait. There comes a time in the market every year when this happens. However, I don't think we're quite there yet. We might be close, but it's March 20th as of this show. I don't think we're quite there yet. And I'm not sure Gilmore is in that category of players because I do think he's going to sign for good money. I do think he's going to have some serious interest around the NFL. And I believe those players that sign after the NFL draft, for the most part, are guys where you're not missing out on much if you don't get them, right? I think, for example, and I'm not trying to frame this in a mean way, but I think Zeke could fall into that bucket, right? Where James Slater reported that the Cowboys did not call Zeke, have not called Zeke yet. I could see if the Cowboys miss out on a starting caliber running back and their back is against the wall, I could see them bringing back Zeke for a running back committee, right? Like, I'm not sure if I see Gilly in that same light. I'm not. I don't think that. But Mel might be right though. James says you are lying. Cornerbacks don't grow on trees. Wait. Pause. I don't know if this is for me though. It might be for somebody else. But just to be clear, let me rewind though. I'm not saying the Cowboys shouldn't bring back Jordan Lewis. I am calling for them to bring back Stefon Gilmore. I'm calling for them to bring back Gilmore. I'm saying the Cowboys, based on how they operate and how they do things, I wouldn't be surprised at them looking at the cornerback group and being like, hey, we have a solid starting trio, which they do. They do have a solid starting trio right now. That's what I mean, though. I'm not trying to suggest that cornerbacks don't grow on trees or something like that. I've said it enough times here on the show. People say that you cannot have enough edge rushers in the NFL. The same goes for cornerbacks these days when base personnel around the league is 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers on the field. So just wanted to make that clear. I do see eye to eye with you, James, on that. Never meant that the Cowboys shouldn't bring back Gilmore. I want them to bring back Gilmore. I don't think they do, though. I might be wrong. I hope I am wrong. Just based on the way that they have done things, I'm not going to bet on them spending that money to bring back number 21. Isidro says, I am trying to be optimistic, Mo, but this offseason has been brutal. And I think all of Cowboys Nation is pretty much on the same boat there with you, Isidro, where people are like, man, I just don't see what the plan is. I was talking to Aisha Morrison the other day on Twitter, and Aisha has been on the show. She's a great guest. And obviously she's killing it with all that she does for the Cowboys, killing it on the draft show and all that. And she tweeted out something about, her being surprised at the Cowboys not prioritizing bringing back a veteran nose tackle. And, as we talked about last night, somebody that was not going to break the bank for you. Haven't even seen if the details are out on the Hanking Seahawks deal. But I'm scared of seeing them. But anyways, here's what I was getting toward. I told her that the frustrating part for me was that I just don't get what the plan is for the Cowboys right now. I don't think they're rebuilding. I don't think they're going all in. I think they're somewhere in the middle and just being mediocre about it. And she replied that, hey, I don't think anyone has a happy feeling about what is going on. And I think we're just or all in that same space. Um, Blocking a Facebook user right now. There you go. Cerebral Assassin says, hey, Bo, what's up with the Alabama linebacker? Why isn't there any highlight tape on him? Dallas Turner. I haven't searched for like highlights on YouTube. I don't know if that's what you mean, but Dallas Turner has definitely been talked about in the NFL draft community from what I've gathered. I think he's going to be, a top 10 pick, though, because, he is an edge rusher, not only like linebacker. So he's going to have some solid, attention there. I don't know if it's like the tape thing where people are not posting a lot of tape these days on prospects because schools are taking them down on YouTube. That might be it. I'm not sure that's what you mean, Cerebral. But I'm pretty sure if you look for highlights, you should be able to find some. Am I wrong on that? I would be surprised otherwise, because it's an Alabama player and all of that. It's not like we're talking about an obscure school there. I'm gonna look into it though. I'm intrigued now. I'm intrigued. Anyways, moving on a little bit here. I think we're all on the same page. We would like Gilly back. But now we got to figure out if the Cowboys are going to bring him back or not. Number two question that I have remaining on this Cowboys free agency is one that I think has been overlooked. And that is, will the Cowboys make a signing at edge? Defensive end, outside linebacker, whatever you want to call it, edge rusher, right? Obviously, they're not going to make a splash. Heck, the time has passed for that to happen. Players are off the shelves now. But there are still some names out there that I could be interested in. And I think we're underestimating a little bit what losing Armstrong and Fowler represents. And not only are they quality players, but they were players that got involved quite a lot. Together, they combined for over 700 snaps, defensively speaking, as a number 3 guy, as a number 4 guy. Now, I understand that the Dan Quinn NASCAR front is likely not going to, be featured as often as it was under Quinn. Every team has a NASCAR front where 3rd and long, they get 4 defensive ends on the field, and it's just pure pass rush chaos for obvious passing situations. Mike Zimmer might still have some of that. A lot of defensive coordinators do around the league, but it's not going to be as often. But still, defensive end depth is going to be important. Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, they're awesome at what they do. They're one of the biggest strengths on this team. But right now, the number 3 guy behind those two is Sam Williams, and it's Viliami Fehoko. Now, they might have hit on Viliami Fehoko, but are we betting on that when he was a healthy scratch for all of last season? I struggle with it. I think it's a bad sign. And he was also a Dan Quinn pick, right? He's out. Mike Zimmer is in. I just wonder about Fehoko. He's one of the biggest question marks on this team in the sense that we just don't know what's up with Viliami. We don't know at all. Because there's also the argument to be made that he was just buried in a loaded defensive end room, because it was loaded. I think that having Parsons, Lawrence, Fowler, Armstrong, Williams, and then getting to like even Chauncey Golston, who is a flex guy and can play outside and inside, like it was a tough position group to get you on the field. Maybe now that a spot is open, maybe it can turn out to be that Fehoko was actually good all along, not just good enough to beat out those players as a 4th-round rookie. And that will be a nice surprise. But for now, we just don't know what is up with Fehoko. And I think the Cowboys would be smart to look at somebody and sign him. A lot of people by now, have pointed towards Carl Lawson now. Carl Lawson is an intriguing player just because he does fit the Cowboys' description of the free agents that they like. He's somebody that is going to likely sign for a 1-year deal. ADC Sports projected him to sign for $3 million dollars before free agency began. So there's more or less that price range to think about. Cowboys did sign Kendricks for 3.5 different positions, but I would argue it's likely to happen. Like if you sign somebody like Carl Lawson, and Lawson was also kind of buried on the depth chart for the New York Jets recently. There was a very deep group of guys in that defensive line over there with the New York Jets, where you had Bryce Hoff and you had a lot of players that people didn't know about, but they were putting up some solid numbers. And that maybe led to Lawson being a little bit buried. But right now, Carl Lawson is one of the best free agents remaining, and specifically one of the guys with the biggest upside as well. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys target him because he is one of those players that, again, I could see being a realistic candidate for them to sign. I was looking for some of his stats here from from Carl Lawson, excuse me. Obviously, he has an injury history, including a torn Achilles in 2021. And that's been the case for Carl Lawson all year, or all of his career since he arrived in the NFL. And we talked about him potentially being a prospect for the Cowboys. Going to be 29 years old too, so that might be a factor there for the Cowboys. But hell yeah, I would do it for $3 million. I would add some help at edge, because you're in a situation where you gotta pick an offensive lineman in the draft. You gotta pick a linebacker. You gotta pick a running back. Like they're piling on the needs that they need to address in the NFL draft, to where I would just get this checked out of that. I would check that on the check that box basically ahead of the NFL draft. I would just take care of some edge rusher depth. And if I've got Sam Williams and I've got Carl Lawson as my 3 and my 4, and then Fehoko to develop, I'm relatively comfortable. I know it's a step back compared to what the Cowboys had in 2023, but it was not normal. The Cowboys, I think, we maybe didn't even fully realize the kind of edge room that the Cowboys had last year, excuse me. So I'm intrigued about that. Enrique says, what about Calais Campbell or Jaden Clowney? Now, man, I would like them. I do think we're talking about a slightly higher price. Not that slightly even. Let me try to pull up the projections from ADC Sports here very quickly. I said $3 million, right, for Carl Lawson. Jaden Clowney is projected at $10.5 million by ADZ Sports. Let's say that it's lower than that. What, 7, 8 million for Jaden Clowney? And then there's Calais Campbell. He's 8.5 projected by ADZ Sports. So we are talking about slightly more expensive guys. And Enrique, that might be like enough for me to be like, yeah, I don't think the Cowboys would do it. But I would love it. Jaden Clowney, I've been on that bandwagon for a long time now. I know Jaden Clowney didn't fulfill expectations after arriving as the insane number 1 pick out of South Carolina that was an absolute menace on the football field. But he's been a solid starter for a few years now. And he's been signing like these short-term contracts where he just cashes in, is able to move on pretty quickly. I like what Jaden Clowney has done in the last few years, and I would love him as a number 3 in that edge rotation. I just don't think the Cowboys would pay the money, though, for him. But I would absolutely like somebody like Jaden Clowney on the team. Calais Campbell, honestly, I'm not as familiar as with how he's played as of late, so I might be in the dark a little bit there. But I know a lot of people have said that, hey, this guy actually still can play. So you're onto something there for sure. Now, that's number 2 question. Number 3 question, and this is one that might get a little bit controversial here. This is more of a post-draft one. I see. Somebody mentioned earlier on the show that, hey, what if the Cowboys wait until after the NFL draft and get Stefon Gilmore? We've talked about that for a while now. There's a candidate out there that Cowboys fans are familiar with. You can see him on the screen, actually, that I could see the Cowboys signing if they don't get that center in the 2024 NFL draft. If they don't get, say, Jackson Powers Johnson, Graham Barton, whichever other day two center that you can think of, and the Cowboys are going into the season basically trying to figure out if they want to play TJ Voss or they want to play Brock Hoffman, you know who I should think they should consider reuniting with? Conor Williams. Before you say no, I had somebody reach out to me on Twitter and be like, that's Conor holding Williams. Before you bring all of that up, let me say this. Conor Williams, over the last couple of years, has played his best football ever. And that's not a coincidence. Because not only was he playing for a different team, he was playing a different position over there with the Miami Dolphins, playing center for them. He had, just last year, number 1 center run blocking grade from PFF, number 3 among all offensive linemen. Conor Williams has figured something out. Now, is he going to be the same if he goes back to the Cowboys? Maybe not. Would I like to find out? Hell yeah. Now, you might say, hey, if he's so good, then the Cowboys are not going to pay for him. This is where we can start cooking now. Conor Williams suffered a knee injury last year. That might turn a lot of you off, but hey, it is the Cowboys way, and we're operating under a realistic lens on tonight's show on who the Cowboys could add, who they could not add. And I think this one makes a lot of sense. Suffered an injury, so that means his price will be at a discount. Hold on. Since he's rehabbing from that knee injury, his agent has publicly said that, hey, Williams is right now focused on getting right, and he's going to want to sign until the summer. You know who gets some post-June first cap savings in the summer? Hell yeah, the Cowboys do. $9.5 million from that Michael Gallup release. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think there's a lot of items we're checking slowly for a Conor Williams return. Now, if it's not Williams, is there any options out there that the Cowboys can get to improve the offensive line? We talked about a couple of, low risk, high reward tackles like Mekhi Becton last night. Sure, I would like to bet on Mekhi Becton, but also there's a lot of, injury concerns there that I'm not super excited about. But Bill Barnwell for ESPN did list his top 20 free agents today on an article, and one of them, he named the Dallas Cowboys as the best fit, and that was Laken Tomlinson. For those of you who don't remember Laken, he was a starter for the San Francisco 49ers for a good while. Not a great starter, I will say that. Not a great starter. But, battle-tested. He's been in the NFL for a while, spent the last couple of years with the Jets, went to the Pro Bowl in 2021 with the Niners. Still, started his career with the Detroit Lions. Laken Tomlinson has been around, and he's a very cheap player in the market today, I would assume. Could the Cowboys just get that insurance policy? I would do it. I would get an offensive lineman in the NFL free agency, so in case things go south in the NFL draft, and I am totally and completely wiped out at offensive line, I can just maybe take the best player available and be like, hey, I'll live to fight another day. I'll pick somebody in round 2, maybe give him a chance to earn a spot on the roster and just move on with Tyler Smith at left tackle and somebody like Tomlinson at left guard. I can see why a lot of people won't like these sort of plans and conversations because they're not sexy. They're not improvements. They're not upgrades. But we're working with what we are working, guys. Listen, this is the situation. This is the world that we live in right now with the Cowboys. And I'll say that I would just like to have those sort of plan Bs, those sort of insurance policies. And at least these are players that I absolutely think the Cowboys would consider based on what they do in free agency, which is go bargain bin shopping and trying to find those answers in the least expensive segment of free agency. Let's see what you guys have to say, though, in the chat. Shout out to Rico Jones. We've got Katharina saying that, hey, Pollard wasn't that good at all, not to mention anyways. I think he wasn't like bad. I think I understand where you're coming from in the sense that, hey, he might not have been as great as we thought he would be once he was promoted to running back 1. But yeah. Gregory says, Mo, off subject. Who do you have in the national championship? I have UConn over Houston. Man, I'll be honest with you. I haven't seen 10 seconds of college basketball this season. I need to fill out my bracket for, the pool they're putting together over on A to Z Sports. Every team has one of those. I gotta do mine, but it's gonna be so randomly picked. I haven't tuned into college basketball at all this year. Like, not one game. I haven't placed a single bet on college basketball this season, man. So I'm going to leave you hanging on that one. I'm sorry about that. Let's see here. Russell says, I don't understand why they don't convert more of Dak's salary into a signing bonus, get more cap relief. Well, Russell, because otherwise, how would they tell people that they cannot sign free agents? How would they use that excuse? Know what I'm saying? Isidro says QBs will be taken 1 through 4, so a premium tackle or center will fall into our laps. Sounds like a possibility, man. They're going 1, 2, 3 for sure. The question now is, can the Vikings trade up? Can the Giants trade up? Who can trade up and get number 4 or number 5 in the NFL draft? It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun one for quarterbacks for sure. Russell says that he likes JPJ, by the way. Oh, I do too. If they can get Jackson Powers Johnson, hell yeah, go for it. Especially if there's not a tackle out there that they can, bet on or something like that. Ladies and gentlemen, that will be it for me tonight here on the show. As always, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to A to Z Sports Dallas Primetime. Do me a favor, hit the like button for me, and I'll see you tomorrow night here on the show to end the week of prime time, and we'll have some fun. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to everyone in the chat. Thank you. Shout out to the podcast audience as well. Thank you to everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.